This is 12/14/2013, and we're here at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Benedict. Keith was in the Marine Corps in World War II, and Jean was in the Marine Corps in World War II. They're probably the only two living Marine Corps veterans from World War II in the United States at this time. I cannot totally document that, but the only two married couples that were both in World War II. That's a pretty rare event to have both living and have served in the Marine Corps. Women in 2013 comprised about 6% of the Marine Corps. Back in World War II, it was a much smaller percentage. Congress approved about 1943 to have women in the Marine Corps. And so we're going to first interview Jean about her experiences of how she got in the Marine Corps. And then we will talk to Keith after that, and then we will ask questions of both of them. So, Jean, introduce yourself and your birth date and your development in time between birth and joining the Marine Corps.
You mean where I worked or anything too?
We'll start first with where you were born and when.
I was born here in Evansville on October 14th, 1920. I am an only child.
Where did you live in Evansville?
Well, I lived up to 1120 West Oregon Street, which anyone in that neighborhood was just about a block and a half from the Germania Medicorps. And I lived there until September of 1941. Then my parents built a house across the street from where we live now. And we moved there in 1941. That address across the street is 844 Keck. Our address is 845 Keck. And that's where I lived then. When I attended Fulton Elementary School and Central High School. When I joined the Marine Corps, at the time, I had a boyfriend in East St. Louis who was in the Marine Corps. And he was killed in July of 1943. Well, previous to that, I had always told my parents that I thought I wanted to join the service because in my life I had never been visiting anywhere west of St. Louis. And then when this happened with him, my folks knew that I wanted to do something different. So in August of 1943, I enlisted in the Marine Corps at Chicago. I was called to boot camp in Camp Lejeune, Jacksonville, North Carolina. I left home the first day of November, 1943. We had 6 weeks of boot camp, and then we said we could choose where we wanted to be transferred to. So I chose Camp Elliott in San Diego. Of course, there were a number of us transferred to Camp Elliott, and we arrived there a few days before Christmas of 1943. And that's how I got in the Marine Corps and got to California. Then in the spring of 1944, I was a clerk typist. At the time, in World War II, women in service were not in combat. And I was very good with typing in high school, so I was just a regular clerk typist. My position with 2 or 3 others was in the Sergeant Major's office of the Fleet Marine Force, which was the big base for all the fleet in the Pacific. Well, in the spring, the whole Fleet Marine Force was transferred to Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California. And that is where I was still as a clerk typist. Then they told us that, of course, the war was getting a little more over, that we could sign if we wanted to go to Hawaii. We were to sign for 2 years. So, of course, I was ready to go travel. Then I was in the third group of women Marines who was transferred to Hawaii in March of 1945. We had signed for 2 years, but then peace was declared in August, and by then, in December of 1945, the women Marines were brought back to the United States. We landed at San Francisco, and they gradually got us together on troop train. We went all the way across country to Arlington, Virginia, and that is where we were until we were discharged. And I was discharged on January the 4th, 1946, and returned to Evansville.
With the rank of?
Well, the rank of corporal, but actually I was a PFC during my whole service time, once I was out of boot camp.
Now, your boyfriend back in 1943 was killed in July of 43. How was he killed, in what battle?
He was in a Marine Raider battalion. I'm not sure just exactly where the attack was, but he was killed in the Marine Raiders.
And then you came back to Evansville after you left Arlington and have been in Evansville ever since.
Yes, this is my home, and I came back home.
So, and you have one child here, have one son, is that correct?
Yes, we have one son here in Evansville. Our daughter, unfortunately, passed away 15 years ago from ALS.
Lou Gehrig's disease.
Lou Gehrig's disease, yes.
And so you've been a native of Evansville, out of Evansville, for really from 43 to 46, but otherwise 90 out of your 93 years you've been in Evansville,
I
Indiana.
have lived in Evansville, yes.
Yeah. And how did you perceive World War II? In 1943, were you scared that Germany or Japan was going to take over the United States? Did you have some fear of things? And Evansville, you're living on Keck Avenue, so there was a Chrysler plant within a block of here where they refurbished tanks. You probably watched them refurbish multiple tanks, and they made 95% of the 45 bullets here. What did you think about all, and they tested the tanks here on a track within a block of your growing up. Can you tell us about what you thought about the tanks and the bullets factory and other things around with Chrysler?
Well, I was just thankful that we had something like that. Of course, everybody kept hoping and praying that, the war would go our way. And I just can't really say any more than that. We were just hoping, that the Allies would win.
When you grew up, do you remember visiting Republic Air or seeing the LST factory downtown? Or they probably were all restricted, you couldn't visit them, but it's probably a pretty bustling town with those 3 big factories going. Do you have any memory of any of those 3 factories?
No, I don't remember visiting any of those.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask Mr. Benedict, Keith, some questions, and I'm going to ask both of you some questions. How did you meet Keith, and when did you get married?
Well, when we were in Hawaii, I don't remember the exact date. As I said, I went over in March. It may have been in May sometime. The friend of another girl who was a clerk typist in our office, he came to visit her one time, and he told me that he had met a Marine over in Transient Center there in Pearl Harbor. He'd like to bring him over some evening when he came visit his girlfriend. So, fine. So Keith came over one evening with him, and he asked me then. Of course, now let me tell you this. When the fellas came to visit us girls in our barracks, you might say, or our place. Where we women Marines were, I'm trying to think of what I would say. Well, of course, we had barracks there. There was a dirt road in front of our area there. And the fellows had to stand on the far side of the dirt road. There was a Marine guard at the gate. And then after chow, we would go down, and then we could bring them in. Otherwise, they could not come in our area. Huh. And of course, this was after evening. And we had no liberty passes, and we just sat around in our community outside there. Everybody just sat around and visited. And of course, by 10 o'clock taps, they had to leave. And this is the way it was every evening. So Keith asked if he could come back the next night. I said, well, sure. And it was just nice fun sitting out talking. Well, then he asked if he could come back the next night. And he just kept coming over every evening. And we just sort of knew as time went on, it was just that way. Yeah. So actually, in September then, after peace was declared, you want me to tell him this? He came over in September one day, and he said, now you know, I have enough points to go home. This is how we got engaged. And he said, I have written to my mother to buy you an engagement ring and mail it to you. Now he said, if it comes before I leave, don't you open the package. Okay, I said, fine. So we went on up to be with our friends. Well, here on October 27th, I get this little package from a jeweler in Hillsdale, Michigan. And I did not open it. And Keith came and he opened it. And I don't remember, and of course I was so excited. I don't recall whether he actually put the ring on my finger or not. But he said, here, and he handed me the ring box, and we went on up to be with our friends, and that's how we got engaged. And a week later, he was on his way home.
Yeah. Well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So, and then another thing, after I got home in January, I did not see him again until March, when I took a week off from my job and went to Michigan to meet my future in-laws.
What city in Michigan did you go to?
Well, he lived in Jonesville, Michigan. Daddy, you want to tell him about it?
Well, we're going to talk to Keith, and I'm going to ask him some questions.
Right.
But what was it like? Jean, being in the Marine Corps as a woman? You were supporting the troops, but right now in 2013, it's only 6% of the Marine Corps are women. At your time, it was probably less than 1%, even less than 0.5% were women. But they still gave you were a clerk, and they gave you a lot of respect and everything else. It was a service to our country, but you were much a minority at your time, very much a minority. But the world, we were so scared, and any person giving to the safety of our country was respected. But you were very much a minority, but you didn't feel ostracized or anything else being a woman Marine, did you?
No, well, I'm sure that there were some that maybe have had things said to them, but all in all, I was treated very well by everyone, by the men, by officers, by other men. I have no problem with that at all. It was just very nice people. I met some very nice other gal women Marines, and I still correspond with one today. The others have passed on, but it was just a wonderful experience, and I feel like, well, for me personally, it was a wonderful experience. I got to travel. Of course, I met Keith, But I feel like I helped. Because back in World War II, there were pictures of Uncle Sam all over the country with him pointing a finger, said, we need you, or what
Yeah, that's what he said, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I want to do my part, but yet it was a good experience for me personally, too. And of course, the best thing of all is two things I've always said. The Allies won, and I met my husband.
Yeah.
That's the two most wonderful things that came out of it.
Yeah. Well, it was, and you got to see the world too. You wouldn't have got to see the world like that at a very young age.
Oh no!
To see so many things. You saw Camp Lejeune. You did boot camp in Camp Lejeune.
Yes.
Then the Elliott Base in San Diego. Then Camp Pendleton, and then Hawaii. Do you remember where Pearl Harbor was? Did you ever get to see where they bombed when you were there? Or never?
No, we were never taken to the actual place where the bombing was.
Where was the Marine Corps barracks in? Was it in Oahu?
Yes, we were in Oahu at Pearl Harbor, and they told us, we were told, that our women barracks were on Mauna Loa Ridge. Now, it was in Pearl Harbor. We could walk through when we left our area. We could go down through another military area, down to a city street and get a bus and go on into Honolulu. That's the way we could go.
Did you do that some?
Oh yes, when we'd go get a Liberty Pass on Saturday or Sunday, me and some girlfriends, or then when I met Keith, because we didn't have transportation, see, we had to go by bus.
When you were on leave, or on Liberty, would you have to be in uniform or not?
Oh, definitely.
All during World War II, you were in uniform. When you were downtown, you were in uniform.
Oh, definitely.
24 hours, except when you were sleeping, you were in uniform.
Right. We had summer uniforms that we wore over there.
I'm going to show a picture of you here in just a second. Let me just show a picture of you. Okay, this is a picture of Jean in graduating from boot camp in 1943. She's in the back row, in the center. She's the tallest one. And I will zoom down on her picture, but this is Jean, 1943, and that's her graduation from boot camp.
Well, it's when we first got there.
Or first got there.
Yes, when we first got there, they took our picture.
Put you in uniform.
Because see, we were in uniform all the time we were in boot camp.
And then here's the civilian clothes that they had a picture of her. She's the tallest one in the back row here in civilian clothes. Photograph of the 237th Marine Corps birthday ball. This is a brochure from the Evansville Marine Corps Board, the 237th birthday, November 2012. So about a year ago, and Jean and Keith were able to make it to that ball. Birthday cake, and this was last year. This year is the 70th birthday, but last year it was the 69th birthday for the Marine Corps women. Remember, they were started in 1943 in February. This is a cake remembering them. These are some of the other Marine Corps veterans here in Evansville that were giving a tribute to Jean, and you see them in uniform. And this was in November of 2000. And Jean was the oldest individual at the Marine Corps Ball in 2012. There's one other Marine that's 98 in Evansville that's older than Jean, but it's a man named Mr. Bruce. And Jean is probably the oldest woman Marine in Evansville and one of the oldest probably in the United States. So this is a tremendous historical event to have an interview with her in 2013. And this is some of the other Marine Corps people that are giving her a tribute. Okay. This is Keith Benedict Sr. Keith, can you tell us, and we still have Jean Benedict with us. Jean has just talked to us, and Keith is going to go over some of his, where he was born and his experience with the Marine Corps. Keith is one of the oldest Marine veterans in Evansville, a World War II veteran. Very nice of you to let us interview you today, Keith. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about things?
Well, I was Okay, I was born August the 18th, 1923, and I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan, in a hospital in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And although my parents didn't live there, that was a hospital that was available to Methodist ministers. My dad was a Methodist minister, and I had 4 brothers, and I was the only one that was born in the hospital. The rest of them were homeborn. And I lived in several little towns in Michigan where my dad was assigned to preach.
Talk loud enough.
And some of them was, they had a pretty good population of Chippewa Indians then. And he preached in towns where he preached in Chippewa, sermons in Chippewa and sermons in English. And because he had those people in his congregation. And I was born there, and I went to, I lived in another little town called North Adams, Michigan. And then we moved to, that had a population of about 300, and I think it still has. And then we moved to Jonesville, Michigan, which had a population at that time of about 1,200 people. And I went to school there, and it was I had a graduating class of 37. And on our senior year, we made the graduating class. It worked for 4 years and saved money to make a trip by boat to Niagara Falls. So we made a trip, the whole class, 37 people, and we made a class to, made a trip to Niagara Falls, and we stayed on the boat, and the best I can remember, it was like 4 or 5 day trip. And that was in June of '41, and when we got back to Detroit, he left Detroit. When we got back to Detroit, 2 of my classmates went down, volunteered in the Marine Corps. And I couldn't join because I had a double hernia.
Okay.
And at that time, they wouldn't take, of course, they wouldn't take me. But anyway,
You don't need
so I went back home, and I got a job making, and I thought, well, I might as well wait until I had my hernia fixed, and then I thought, well, I'll wait till they draft me. So then they drafted me, and when I was drafted.
When did they draft you? What date was that about, Keith? But before the war started or after the war started?
Before the war started.
Yes.
And no, it was after the war started.
After, yes.
So it'd have been after December 7th, 41. So somewhere in late 41 or 42, you got drafted. And then where did you go sign up, and where did you go to boot camp?
Well, when I drafted, when I went to Kalamazoo, I went in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and when they drafted me, I could have had a deferment because I was making aviation parts, and my supervisor in the factory wanted to give me a deferment, and I didn't want one. And so when they drafted me, the first thing I got to Kalamazoo, I asked, I don't remember who I asked, but I asked somebody there, somebody in authority, I said, can I go in the Marine Corps? I had an idea I wanted to go in the Marine Corps for quite a while. It was glamorous.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, we need some people. And so he fixed it up, so I went in the Marine Corps.
Right, in Kalamazoo. And Kalamazoo is the home of Checker Cab. That's where the Checker Cabs were made, and also Stryker, an orthopedic company there. It's in a new medical school in 2012-13. It's Southern Illinois, or Southern Michigan, but then he went, and you got in the Marine Corps there. Those companies were probably not, Stryker wasn't even existent. Checker Cab may have been at that time. Then you went to Marine Corps. Where did you go to boot camp then?
Well, what happened is at that time, they just, they needed guys in the Marine Corps to replace the casualties that had come off of Guadalcanal. And so I didn't get to go back to Jonesville to visit my parents. I mean, they wanted me to go right away to boot camp. So the next day they shipped me out to send me to San Diego, to Marine Corps base in San Diego boot camp. And I never got a furlough while I was in service at all.
Then after you got out of boot camp, would have been 42 or 43, then you went straight over to...
Then they shipped me over, and 2nd Marine Division was on... 2nd Marine Division was on New Zealand.
Yes.
And when they shipped me over, though, they sent me to New Caledonia first. We stopped at New Caledonia. And in New Caledonia, they asked everybody, we all fell out in the field. And they come down the ranks and they ask everybody, do you want to go in the Marine Raiders? So I volunteered, I didn't know any better.
This was in 43.
And I volunteered.
About 43,
yeah. And I went, so they sent me over to the Raiders camp, Marine Raiders camp. And the guy in charge of the Marine Raiders, the officer, was James Roosevelt, was FDR's son.
Wow.
And I was in there a day or day and a half, and they came to me and they said, well, your records didn't come off of the board the ship, and we can't find your records, so we're going to have to send you back to the other. So they sent me back.
To where?
Well, to the other camp.
I see, yes.
And then they shipped me, we shipped out of there and went to
New Zealand?
no, Tonga. We stopped at Tonga
Yes.
in the harbor for a day or two, and then we stopped at Norfolk Island for a day or two.
What kind of ship were you on? Was it an LST or a
No.
bigger ship?
It was a
Troop transport ship?
no. It was an icebreaker they captured in the North Sea and sent it out to the Pacific to haul troops.
I see.
And it was a hard riding thing. And there was 3,400 men on board this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when they left, they didn't have enough
Food and water?
Well, they had enough food and water you got 2 meals a day. But anyway, the ship's carpenters and stuff built out on the side of the ship. You walk up to the rail, and then they built out over the rail, and they had the latrines out over the ocean.
Don't talk.
No, well, over the ocean, because there wasn't enough latrines for 3,400 men in that
They
ship.
had one on one side of the ship, and one on the other.
Yeah, just to get rid of waste.
Yeah.
And out in the middle of the ocean,
Yeah.
that's a big problem with ships. They get too close to the shore, they can't get rid of their waste, and also there was not enough toilets on that ship. 3,400 Marines is a lot of Marines on any ship. You were packed like sardines in there.
And there there wasn't a lot of, didn't have any excess of fresh water, and nobody, I mean, you couldn't take a shower.
Yeah.
There wasn't no fresh water. And so we got out there someplace, and one night it come off a big rain. And in the middle of the night, and everybody heard it raining. It was pouring, you know, pouring and thundering. And so everybody was, pretty soon everybody was up on deck naked taking showers. And then it rained.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when you don't have fresh water, it's the only time you had a chance, wasn't it? Everybody was getting their shower.
Yeah, everybody got a shower.
Yeah. Then that ship took you down to New Zealand, or did you stop before you got to New Zealand?
No, when we got up close to New Zealand, close to the harbor, they cut all that superstructure of them latrines off the side of the boat and let them drop in the ocean. And we went in the harbor. And then I was sent to, I went to this Nui.
Was this the northern island of New Zealand or the southern? Up by Auckland?
Northern part.
So you're up near Auckland, up in the northern part. Yes.
Yeah, no, it was near
Christ,
Wellington.
where Wellington, yes, okay.
All right. But anyway, the camp I was in was where the 3rd Battalion, 10th Marine, part of the division was. And so we trained there. And when I was in boot camp, I trained as a forward observer and a mortarman. And I was a gunner and a forward observer, but I never used it. I was lucky, you know. And I got over, when they sent me over there, they really, when I went in this camp with the 3rd Battalion 10th, it was a pack howitzer outfit. And so I was like a fifth wheel. They didn't know what to do with me.
Yes.
So they ended up putting me in a motor pool, and I'd never driven a truck in my life, you know. Couldn't hardly drive. And but anyway, then I was driving the machine gun section for the artillery.
Yes.
That artillery we had. Well, we was there a while, and then they found out later, well, pretty soon, that the 2nd Marine Division was going to invade Tarawa.
Yes.
So they packed these guys up, and there was about 20 of us that we stayed and closed that camp down. And they left a couple of weeks ahead of us. The rest of everybody left. So about 2 weeks later, we followed them, and of course we had the news then was we was going to go to Tarawa.
Yes.
We finally found out. Well,
Don't turn your head.
we got aboard ship.
Look this way. Yeah.
Look towards you.
I can't tell you the dates. I don't remember. But anyway, we got aboard ship. And we when the 2nd Marine Division hit Tarawa, it only lasted 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
And I don't know where we went. We went out in the ocean, and we was out there sailing, and then the next thing you know, they turned around. We turned around, the next thing I knew, we landed in Hilo. And then we was there a couple of weeks, and then we went up into, that was on the Big Island.
Yes. Hilo's the biggest Hawaiian island, yes.
Yeah, well, then we went up on the Parker Ranch, and when we went up there, the 20 or 20 whatever there was of us. We went up there and we set this camp up, and then the rest of them came from Tarawa and they came up there in that camp.
And then you waited the war out there in Hawaii. But when you were down in New Zealand, MacArthur wasn't there. He was over in Australia ready to invade the Philippines. So you never did see MacArthur in New Zealand,
You
did
ever
you?
seen MacArthur?
He said, I will
never-
return. Yeah, we'll return. And you were there on New Zealand when he was over in Australia ready to go get the Philippines.
And I never, I don't know, I'm just lucky. I never
Yeah.
got in any combat.
And then you came
I was
back.
trained for it, but I didn't get in.
Yeah, well, that happened with a lot of people. Then you came back, you got discharged, when you met your wife there in Hawaii, and that's how you got to meet her there in 1945.
Yeah.
Then where did you get discharged, and when did you come home, and then what did you do in Evansville?
Well,
And
I come back and I got discharged at Great Lakes Naval Training Station up in Chicago, because it was closest to my home, see?
Uh-huh.
And then,
Then you get married up there, or you get married in Evansville?
no, we got married down here because
Her family was from here, and
her
you
family
go to the
was
wife's
here,
house.
and I didn't have a job up there. I mean, I had the people that hired me before, where I was making these aircraft parts,
They weren't going to do that
didn't want to
anymore.
hire me back.
That was mostly World War II aircraft things, and so there was no more making aircraft, so
Right, he
those
didn't
jobs are all gone.
He said he wasn't going to hire me back, and
So you worked at one of the biggest things here in town, Bucyrus Erie, at that time. Bucyrus Erie is one of our biggest plants in Evansville. They made bulldozers, helped make the Panama Canal, and you were a
Yeah.
craftsman there at Bucyrus Erie.
what I did was I come back and she was working at.
I'll tell them about the school.
Anyway, I come back and I got an interview at Serval. Serval was big then.
Making airplane wings. It was very big, and it was a big refrigerator plant. Made refrigeration off just a gas, one moving part in it. Was not popular after World War II, but it's become more popular now where you don't need electricity, you just need a little gas, so even third world countries are using their type of refrigerators.
Yeah.
But they made airplanes for World War II and actually Korean War.
Yep.
You
And
work for them? Did you work for them, Keith?
no, I applied there and I applied to Bucyrus. And when I went on to Bucyrus, the employment manager out there took me down to in the shop, and they had the biggest turret lathe I'd ever seen. I'd never seen anything that big. I was running automatic screw machines, you know. I was
Yes.
an automatic screw machine guy. And they had this great big turret lathe, brand new. And we took me down to the shop, and he said, now if you get this job, and it's likely you will, he said, this is a machine you'll be running. Well, of course, I come back home here, and I got a letter from Bucyrus and a letter from Serval, and it said both of them wanted to hire me.
Yes.
And I'd never seen a lathe that big, and I had to run it,
Yeah.
you know. So I went to Bucyrus.
And Bucyrus made bulldozers and things for coal mines and drills. And it was a medium-sized company here where they made large bulldozers, small ones. I think we made the medium-sized here and export them everywhere.
We made a lot of shovels and drag lines.
Yes. Yeah.
And we made rotary drills, a 10-hour rotary drill, and we made spudding drills. But anyway,
And made a lot of things for World War II too. They made parts for bulldozers for World War II and other things. So a lot of things they had made went to the war effort as well.
I want to tell you something else. They made stuff in World War One. They made artillery shells for the British in World War One.
Wow.
But anyway, I went out there and I had a good career at Bucyrus because I worked there a while, and I got to be a line foreman, and then I was general foreman of assembly and shipping and testing for, I guess, 10, 12 years, wasn't I?
Gosh, I don't know, honey.
Then Keith, you know a lot about some ammunition around here. Can you tell us about? We made, if you look at incendiary bombs, right here within about 2 blocks of here.
Yep.
Chrysler plant was here, and that's where they made most of the bullets for World War II, the 45 bullets. But they made incendiary bombs. Incendiary bombs. We dropped them on Tokyo, and I think it was April 1945. We burnt most of the town down, and some of those incendiary bombs were built here. Can you tell us about the creation of incendiary bombs that you've learned from some of your friends? Can you tell us a little bit about how an incendiary bomb and where they were stored, and a little bit more about them, please?
They had, when I come back home, of course, there wasn't anything going in this area, you know, when I got back.
Everything was closed up. You got back in 46 about, didn't you?
Except they had
46? When in 46, Gene? About middle of 46 when you got back here, or when Keith got back here?
Well, when we got married, he moved here in the
Yeah.
summer of 46.
But a lot of the World War II production was shut down. There was no more making Republic Air, no more making LSTs, no more making bullets. Everything was shut down. But tell us about what they had done.
They still had the fence around the place, and they still had watchtowers.
Yes.
But Keck Avenue here was open, and
This is a block away from Chrysler. Chrysler, in the
Yeah.
background, I will show you the background of Keith. Right back there is a building of Chrysler, and that's where 3 billion bullets were made. If you look at that building behind Keith, that's Chrysler in Evansville, Indiana. 3 billion bullets were made in that place. And so they had a lot of steel fences around here, watchtowers. And what about the incendiary bombs they made
they
here?
were made down here.
Yes.
They were down here, and the
Kentucky.
buildings they were made in, they had about the walls were about 4 foot at the bottom, and they come up to the maybe a foot on the top, and the roofs just laid on there. So if anything blew up, it'd blow the roof off.
Huh.
Instead of, and the entryways in them, instead of having a door where you go in, they had the entryway on one end, and then you come out and it went like this. You had to go in and go around to get in it.
Like a maze, so if there was an explosion there, it wouldn't hurt people on the outside.
And inside, they had in the middle of the thing, they had a well, and and they had a mixer in there, big mixer in there. And the way I got this information was a person who was in charge of that was a real good friend of mine. And he worked at BSRs too. He was the supervisor out there, and he would also supervise this down here. And
They'd mix the chemicals there to make the bomb, put the gunpowder in there, and
well, it was a napalm.
napalm's what it was, yes.
And every once in a while, he told me a story. Every once in a while, one of them would get on fire. And they put the gloves on and all the stuff to keep them burning up. And they'd go, and they couldn't put this, they couldn't put them in water. They must have had some phosphorus in them or something.
So they put them in oil, and they had a lot of oil in that building.
Put them in, they put them in oil or kerosene, some kind of kerosene and then they put the lid on them and it smothered them.
Huh.
But he told me a story. He said that was the highest paid job in the plant, and they had a strong union, and so they posted a job, and this job paid like 35 or 40 cents more than any other
Yes.
job and so they'd get somebody bid on it.
Uh-huh.
And maybe one of these would only get on fire maybe once every 3 weeks or something. And he said the guy would just sit there and not do anything. And then you hear about this, and he'd he said I'd put on all my stuff and show him how to put his stuff on, and he'd put his on, and I'd put mine on, and we'd go down, and I'd go in there and cradle this thing and take it over and put it in there and put the lid on it and put it out. And he said, I come out, and the guy said, he was redheaded. He said, boss, redhead, red, yeah, you go to hell, I don't want that job. And he said, so every time that happened, he said, I'd go get the head of the union, and I said, why the hell don't you file agreements? I'm doing the union work. He was the boss. He said I never could get him to file agreements.
What's your language?
But
Well, that was, that's a little bit about the incendiary bombs. I want to ask a couple other questions. I've got you now on film, Gene, as well as Keith. This is, Gene, you're living about across the street where you grew up. So you've lived within the 20 feet here, 90 years of your life. Did your mother and dad have any efforts in the World War II? Did they work at any of these factories in Evansville?
No, my mother did not work, but my dad worked for over 50 years for the L&N Railroad.
L&N. What was his involvement in World War II? Would L&N would take a lot of these, we had so much steel coming in here and so many supplies going in and out. Did he talk much about all that supplies he would take in and out on the L&N Railroad?
No, Dad was not an operator. He was a yard clerk. He worked out in Howell. He checked all the cars, and one of his jobs was to check the cars that came in, and all the stuff that was on the cars.
Did he say it was a busy time during World War II?
Oh yes, it was busy.
Yes.
Yes, it was busy.
Which yard did he work at? There were several.
He worked out in Howell.
In Howell, I
Yes.
see. Yes.
He worked for over 50 years.
when I came here, they over here, the next block over, they had all barracks in there.
Sit up there. Sit.
And those barracks were the people who worked at the shipyard.
Oh yes.
Of course, there wasn't anybody in them.
Nobody in the barracks?
No, not then.
Yeah, but they were full, the shipyard workers, because
Yeah,
the employment in Evansville, there's 19,000 employees. Evansville was a population of about 120,000, but we had 70,000 workers for the World War II effort here. 20,000 making LSTs, 7,000 making P-47s, and 12,000 making these bullets and repairing the bulldozers and the tanks. So a lot of them had no place to sleep. They would be triple bunked. What would happen is a person would work 8 hours, they'd go sleep in a bed. That bed would never get cold because there was always a different person. And so some of the people had to stay here in the barracks, and they fed them, and they came from all around the tri-state, 50 miles. They would drive here, and gas was short, so they'd come here and stay all night and stay all week. And the wage at a restaurant was about $1 a day as a waitress. And if you worked on the LST or worked in the factory, you'd get $1 an hour. And then you get a dangerous job, you get $1.35 an hour. But so all these jobs were around here that people were just swarming to. And 3 big factories, 3 big World War II contracts, February of 42, March of 42, and April 41 or 42. All those 3 big contracts passed, and it became Evansville is the biggest industrial production per capita in the world during World War II, and both of these people witnessed that. Mostly Jean, because she lived here before she got in the Marines, and then Keith came down here and witnessed the post-World War II, and so he got a good job at Bucyrus, but lots of jobs dried up around here because there was no more employment. Everything was World War II employment, and all of a sudden we had International Harvester here, Bucyrus area, and some other factories that have resurfaced. And then Whirlpool became big for Evansville. But this was a tough time post-World War II of finding a good job. Now, Gene, tell us what you did after World War II, what you did here in Evansville. Keith told us he worked at Bucyrus. Can you tell us what you did after you came back and how hard was it to get a job?
Well, let me tell you, I graduated from Central High School in 1938. And I did not have my 18th birthday until October, so there were places I could not go to work yet. So I went back to Central that fall semester and helped in the principal's office. Well, in January of 1939, Mechanic Arts School opened, part of the Evansville Public Schools, which is it's where the old North High School is, just a few blocks from here. I was the first school secretary there at Mechanic Arts School. In case folks don't know about Mechanic Arts School, it was part of the Evansville public school system. The boys could transfer to there for their junior and senior years to learn, a trade.
Yeah.
And then they would graduate from their home high school. Well, I worked there until I went into the Marine Corps. And then in January the 5th, I arrived home in Evansville of 46, and I went back to work at Mechanic Arts School 5 days later. Well, at the time then, as you know from Keith, he did not get his job back in Michigan. So I knew with my job over there and the industrial coordinator and all the connections with industry, that some way I could get him a job here in Evansville. You know, the men there that were so nice that sent him on interviews. So that's when I asked him if he would agree to move to Evansville when we got married, which he did. We were married on July 14th, 1946. That's when he moved to Evansville. And the industrial coordinator at Mechanic Arts School, he was an older man, he was a good friend of mine, sent Keith on these 2 interviews, and that's how Keith got on at Bucyrus.
Well, mechanical arts has been very important to Evansville community. It teaches a lot of high school students that don't want to go to college or go do other things. It teaches them a trade. And I've even have relatives that have gone there. It's been around since 1938 or 39, and it's been very important. And many students have left there and gone to work at Bucyrus and worked at Whirlpool, and it's given many of them a good life. And a lot of students need a trade, and mechanical arts has been a godsend to our community.
Well, see, in the 1950s, when they built the old North High School around Mechanic Arts School, they built around it.
Yeah.
So, of course, with the old North High School not in use now, the buildings just are there.
I have a
That was my work experience.
But that industrial mechanical arts school, I've had cousins that have been at other schools in the city, and they go, just like you said, Gene, they would go 2 years to that school, and then they come over their junior and senior year, and they have great jobs 20, 30 years down the road, and many other people like Keith went to Bucyrus and many other places. They had a great trade for mechanical arts. Now that that arts school is now moved out to on Lynch Road, I think they have a trade school out there now. That opened up about 4 or 5 years ago. But you sure saw a lot of the industry being created in Evansville. Many of these tradespeople came right through your office. When did you work there? From what year to what year then? From 46
then when I came back from the service, I went back to work right away on January the 10th of 46. And I worked there until the end of October 49. Because that time we were expecting our daughter, our first baby.
Yeah, she got me pregnant, she had to quit.
And so you had your first baby around 49 or 50, and then
our Judy was born the end of February 1950.
50, and then your boy was born a little later.
January of 54.
That's Keith Jr. Yes. Yeah. And then you never went back to work, did you?
Well, in the 70s, I went to work at the time when we had the Evansville stockyards. I went to work over in the USDA Market News Reporter's office. It was a 4-hour-a-day job. And I worked there. They put out the market news, and that's when we had the stockyards.
How much was beef a pound then? And Cap Gardner was instrumental there I don't know if you knew Cap Garner. He was big in over there in the
I'm
stockyard.
trying to remember who all the people were there. But I worked there almost 10 years. It was a 4-hour day job with the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
What is it? Did you think both of you end up with jobs after World War II? But how about all your friends? Did they find jobs when they came back to Evansville? Was it hard to get a job because there was no more government paychecks coming out? You had the economy was built on other things.
Well, I would assume that maybe at the time the companies were supposed to hire the people back.
Yes.
So really and truly, I honestly don't know of anyone that, had any big
A lot of them left
problems.
town.
Yeah.
It was, of course, because I say Keith didn't go to work until August, a month after we married, but then he had a little years at Bucyrus.
But
Yeah.
this wasn't during the war, but when I retired, why, I didn't really retire.
Yeah.
I built 7 greenhouses.
Wow. Huh.
Just around
I
the
run
corner
that
from where we
greenhouse.
live here.
Yes.
I've always worked.
This was over by Diamond Mines here. We're at near about 3 blocks from Diamond Avenue in Stringtown. So this area was became more built up after the World War II time. Well, both of you have just, we have an historical event here. This is December 14th, 2013, and we have 2 World War II veterans and both Marine Corps, and both very lucid in their thoughts, and we're going to document this for Evansville history, and I thank both of you for giving us this time, and I'm going to pass this off to students of history for the future, and thank you for your service to your country, and thank you for contributing to the Evansville Society and all the things that you've done, and with your 2 children, and we've lost your daughter, but your son has been a major contributing factor here for both Ivy Tech and USI.
No, he teaches at USI.
Yeah, right, USI professor, and but he's got multiple awards for things at both schools. Thank you very much, Miss Benedict. Do you have any other final comments before I turn this off?
Oh, well, I just think it's wonderful that you have come here to interview us like this.
I'm going to put one of the newspaper clips. I'm just going to show the newspaper clips, and you can talk a little bit. There's one from 2008 that they did in Evansville, and then 2012. And so I will let Jean just describe that. I'm going to put them in front of the film here.
The picture was made shortly after I arrived in San Diego. Because I know my parents wanted a picture of
On the way
me.
over.
No, after I got to San Diego and was stationed there,
Yeah.
I remember another girl and I had a Liberty Pass one day, and they told us where to go in to a photographer. So we did that in San Diego. I knew my folks wanted a picture of me. So that's how that one was made right away.